Before we begin, let me tell you what you're about to hear. This is Sarah's story. A woman who lost everything in a single moment. Her ability to walk. Her husband. Her business. Her best friend. Everything she thought defined her life just disappeared. But here's what makes Sarah's story so powerful: she didn't stay down. When the world told her she was broken, she proved them wrong. When the people she loved walked away, she found the strength within herself. She rebuilt her life from absolute zero, and became stronger than she ever imagined possible. Now, if you're the kind of person who believes in second chances, if you believe that our worst moments don't have to define us, if you believe in the power of the human spirit to rise again, then you're in the right place. This channel is dedicated to sharing stories like Sarah's. Real stories. Stories about courage, resilience, and discovering your worth when everything falls apart. So do me a favor right now, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell. Because every story I share here is meant to remind you, and someone you know, that we're all stronger than we think. Your subscription helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And trust me, the next story might be exactly what you or someone in your life needs to hear. Alright, you ready? Because Sarah's journey is about to begin, and I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at struggle the same way again. Let's go. There are some mornings that stay with you forever. Not because anything extraordinary happens, but because they're so ordinary, so perfectly simple, that when everything falls apart, you find yourself reaching back for them like a lifeline. For Sarah Collins, every morning in Maplewood was one of those mornings. The alarm would go off at 4:30, while the rest of the town still slept beneath quilts and dreams. Sarah never hit snooze. She'd slip out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Mark, and pad barefoot across the cold wooden floor to her little kitchen. That kitchen was her sanctuary, a cozy space with yellow curtains, a worn wooden table, and an old oven that had been baking bread since before Sarah was born. She'd tie her hair back, wash her hands, and begin. Flour. Butter. Sugar. Eggs. Yeast rising in warm water. Her hands moved with the kind of confidence that only comes from doing something 1,000 times, from loving it so much that it becomes part of your heartbeat. She'd knead the dough slowly, feeling it transform under her palms, from sticky and rough to smooth and elastic. There was something almost sacred about it, something that made her feel connected to every grandmother, every mother, every woman who'd ever fed her family with her own 2 hands. By the time the sun started to peek through the kitchen window, the whole house smelled like heaven. Cinnamon rolls. Sourdough loaves. Blueberry muffins. Chocolate chip cookies that melted in your mouth. Sarah would pack everything carefully into baskets lined with checkered cloth, load them into her old sedan, and drive through the waking streets of Maplewood. She'd stop at Mrs. Henderson's house first, the elderly widow who always bought 2 cinnamon rolls and a loaf of bread. Then to the Thompsons, who had 4 kids and needed cookies by the dozen. Then to the corner market, where Mr. Alvarez would sell her pastries alongside his newspapers and coffee. Everyone knew Sarah. Everyone loved Sarah. "You're an angel," Mrs. Henderson would say, pressing a $20 bill into her hand. "You've got magic in those hands, girl," Mr. Alvarez would laugh, shaking his head in wonder. Sarah would smile, hug them, and move on to the next stop. She never thought of herself as special. She was just doing what she loved, working hard, trying to build a life. Trying to build a future. But there was a crack in that future, even if Sarah didn't want to see it. His name was Mark Collins. They'd met 7 years ago at a county fair, him with his easy smile and confident swagger, her with flowers still under her fingernails and hope in her eyes. He'd told her she was beautiful. He'd told her he'd take care of her. He'd told her a lot of things. In the beginning, it felt like love. He'd kiss her forehead before she left for her morning rounds. He'd tell her the house smelled amazing. He'd talk about the future, kids, maybe, or a bigger house, or a real storefront bakery instead of just selling door to door. But somewhere along the way, the kisses stopped. The compliments faded. The future he talked about never seemed to include any effort from him. Mark didn't work much. He'd had a job at the hardware store for a while, then at a construction site, then driving delivery trucks. But something always went wrong. The boss was unfair. The hours were too long. The pay was too little. There was always a reason, always an excuse. So Sarah worked harder. She woke up earlier. She baked more. She smiled through the exhaustion because she believed, God, how she believed, that love was supposed to be hard sometimes. That marriage meant carrying each other. That if she just kept going, kept trying, kept giving, eventually things would get better. Mark would complain when she came home. "You smell like sugar and sweat," he'd say, not even looking up from the television. "I'm tired, Mark. It's been a long day." "You're always tired." She'd bite her tongue. Swallow the hurt. Go take a shower and start preparing for the next morning. Sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Sarah would lie in bed and wonder if this was all there was. If this quiet disappointment was just what marriage looked like. If she was asking for too much by wanting a partner who saw her, who helped her, who loved her the way she loved him. But then the sun would rise again, and she'd push those thoughts away. She'd go to her kitchen, sink her hands into dough, and tell herself that everything would be okay. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. The sky had been gray all morning, heavy with the promise of rain. Sarah had finished her deliveries early and decided to stop by the market to pick up some extra vanilla extract. The holidays were coming, and she wanted to try a new recipe for spiced pear bread. She was driving down Maple Street, ironic, really, given the town's name, when the rain started. Not a gentle drizzle, but a sudden downpour that turned the windshield into a wall of water. Sarah slowed down, leaning forward to see through the storm, her hands tight on the wheel. She didn't see the other car until it was too late. It came from the left, running a red light, hydroplaning on the slick road. There was a split second, just one, where Sarah saw the headlights coming toward her, where her brain screamed at her to do something, anything. Then the world exploded. Metal screaming against metal. Glass shattering. The violent jolt of impact. Her body thrown forward, then sideways, the seatbelt cutting into her chest. The sickening crunch of her car crumpling like paper. And then, silence. Not peaceful silence. The kind of silence that comes after catastrophe, when the world is holding its breath, waiting to see if you're still alive. Sarah tried to move. Tried to breathe. Her chest hurt. Her head throbbed. And her legs. Her legs felt wrong. Distant. Like they belonged to someone else. Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me? Voices. Sirens. Hands reaching for her. Someone prying open the car door. The rain still falling, cold against her face. Stay with us. We've got you. You're going to be okay. But Sarah wasn't sure she believed them. The hospital room was white. Everything was white, the walls, the sheets, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped insects. Sarah woke up slowly, swimming up through layers of fog and pain medication. Her mouth was dry. Her body felt heavy, disconnected. Mark was sitting in a chair by the window, scrolling through his phone. Mark? Her voice came out cracked and small. He looked up, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw something like relief in his eyes. He stood, came to her bedside, took her hand. Hey. You're awake. Thank God. What happened? Car accident. Pretty bad. You've been out for almost 2 days. 2 days. Sarah's mind struggled to process that. 2 days of nothing. 2 days of her life just, gone. Am I okay? Mark's face changed. Something flickered there, uncertainty, discomfort, maybe even fear. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward the door as if hoping a doctor would magically appear and save him from having to answer. That's when Dr. Patel walked in. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but there was a weight to her presence that made Sarah's heart start to race. Mrs. Collins. I'm glad you're awake. How are you feeling? Confused. Sore. My legs feel strange. Dr. Patel pulled up a chair, sat down, and did something that terrified Sarah more than anything else. She took Sarah's hand in both of hers. Sarah, you were in a very serious accident. You sustained significant trauma to your spine. We've done everything we can, but the world started to tilt. The damage was severe. You have partial paralysis from the waist down. With therapy, you may regain some sensation, some movement. But realistically, Dr. Patel's voice was steady, but her eyes were full of sympathy. You may never walk again. The words hung in the air like smoke. You may never walk again. Sarah heard them, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. She'd just been driving. Just been thinking about pear bread and vanilla extract and what to make for dinner. She'd just been living. No, Sarah whispered. No, that's not possible. I'm so sorry. We'll start physical therapy as soon as you're strong enough. We'll do everything we can to help you adjust. Adjust? Sarah's voice cracked. How do I adjust to not being able to walk? Dr. Patel stayed quiet, letting Sarah's anguish fill the room. Mark stood frozen by the window, his face pale, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. When Dr. Patel finally left, giving them privacy, Sarah turned to her husband. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and fast and unstoppable. Mark, I'm scared. He came back to her bedside. He took her hand again. But there was something in his eyes, something that made Sarah's blood run cold even through the grief. It was the look of a man trapped. We'll figure it out, he said, but his voice was hollow. We'll figure it out. Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted so desperately to believe that the man she'd married, the man she'd worked herself to exhaustion for, would stand by her side through this nightmare. She closed her eyes and held on to that hope with everything she had. "He'll stay," she whispered to herself in the darkness of that hospital room. "He loves me. We'll get through this together." But deep down, in a place she wasn't ready to acknowledge yet, Sarah Collins already knew the truth. Some promises are made to be broken. And some people only love you when it's easy. They say you don't really know someone until you see them under pressure. Until life stops being easy and comfortable and starts demanding sacrifice. That's when the mask comes off. That's when you discover who's really standing beside you. Sarah learned this lesson in the cruelest way possible. The first week after she came home from the hospital, Mark tried. Or at least, he seemed to try. He helped her from the car to the wheelchair. He made her toast and coffee in the mornings, though it was never quite right, always burned or too weak. He'd ask if she needed anything, though his voice carried the weight of obligation rather than love. Sarah told herself it was enough. That he was adjusting, just like she was. That they'd find their rhythm again. But by the second week, the cracks started to show. Mark stopped asking how she felt. He'd leave the house in the morning without saying where he was going and come back late at night smelling like beer and cigarettes. When Sarah tried to talk to him, he'd brush her off with vague answers and tired sighs. "I'm dealing with a lot right now, Sarah." "I know, but so am I." "Yeah, well, at least you get to stay home all day." The words hit her like a slap. She'd stared at him, this man she'd married, this man she'd loved, and barely recognized him anymore. Her little bakery business had died the day of the accident. Without her morning deliveries, without her ability to move freely through the kitchen, everything had simply stopped. The bills kept coming, though. Hospital bills. Physical therapy bills. The mortgage. Utilities. Groceries. Their savings evaporated like morning dew. Sarah applied for disability assistance. She sold some of her baking equipment. She watched their bank account shrink and felt herself shrinking with it, becoming smaller, quieter, more invisible with each passing day. And Mark? Mark grew more distant. It was a Thursday evening in late November when Sarah's world collapsed completely. She'd been trying to transfer herself from the wheelchair to the couch, something she'd been practicing in physical therapy, when she heard Mark's phone buzz on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower, and normally Sarah wouldn't have looked. She trusted him. She'd always trusted him. But something made her wheel herself over. Some instinct. Some whisper in the back of her mind that had been growing louder for weeks. The message was from a contact labeled J. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that cologne I like. Red heart." Sarah's hands started shaking. She scrolled up, her heart hammering against her ribs. Message after message. Weeks of them. Photos. Promises. Plans. "Your wife doesn't appreciate you anyway. You deserve someone who can actually take care of you. When are you going to leave her?" The phone slipped from Sarah's hands and clattered onto the floor. Mark appeared in the doorway, towel around his waist, water still dripping from his hair. His eyes went from Sarah's face to the phone on the floor, and she watched something die in his expression. Not shame, not regret, but the last pretense of caring. "How long?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. He didn't answer. "How long, Mark? Does it matter? Does it matter?" Sarah felt something break inside her chest. "I'm your wife. I've been in this wheelchair for 6 weeks, and you've been. What did you expect me to do, Sarah?" His voice turned cold, defensive. "You think I signed up for this? You think this is the life I wanted? I didn't want this either. I didn't choose to get hit by a car. Well, I didn't choose to be a caretaker." The words exploded out of him, ugly and raw. "I'm 32 years old. I'm not supposed to be taking care of someone who can't even walk. Who can't work. Who can't do anything but sit in that chair and feel sorry for herself." Each word was a knife. Each sentence cut deeper than the last. "So that's it?" Sarah's voice broke. 7 years of marriage, and the moment things get hard, you just give up? Find someone else? Mark grabbed his phone from the floor. He wouldn't even look at her. "I'm done, Sarah. I can't do this anymore. Mark, please. I'll come back for my stuff next week." He walked past her, got dressed, and left. Just like that. No apology. No explanation. No backward glance. Sarah sat in that kitchen, in that wheelchair, in the home they'd built together, and felt herself dissolve. She cried until she had no tears left. Until her throat was raw and her head pounded and the sun set and rose again, and still she sat there in the darkness, wondering how her life had become unrecognizable. But the worst was yet to come. Her best friend, Michelle, the woman she'd known since high school, the woman she'd been maid of honor for, the woman she'd trusted with every secret, stopped returning her calls. When Sarah finally reached her, Michelle's voice was cool, distant. I just think. I mean, you're going through a lot right now, Sarah. And I have my own life, my own problems. I can't be your therapist. I'm not asking you to be my therapist. I'm asking you to be my friend. I just need some space, okay? This is all really heavy. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, numb. Even her friend, her best friend, had decided she was too much trouble. Too broken. Too heavy. That night was the darkest of Sarah's life. She sat by the window, looking out at the quiet streets of Maplewood, at the houses where people were living normal lives, walking, working, loving, existing without effort. She thought about her kitchen that used to smell like cinnamon and hope. She thought about the mornings when she'd believed her life had meaning. And she wondered if any of it had ever been real. Maybe they're right, she whispered to the empty room. Maybe I am worthless now. She closed her eyes and felt herself sinking into a darkness deeper than sleep. But sometimes, when you hit absolute bottom, when there's nowhere left to fall, something strange happens. The universe throws you a lifeline. The letter arrived on a gray Monday morning in December. Sarah almost didn't open it. It was from a law office in Boston, Hendricks, Sawyer and Associates, and she assumed it was another bill, another reminder of everything she'd lost. But something made her tear it open anyway. Dear Mrs. Sarah Collins, we are writing to inform you that you are the sole beneficiary of the estate of Mr. Robert Mitchell, who passed away on October 3rd of this year. Sarah's hands froze. Robert Mitchell. Her mother's brother. The uncle she'd met maybe 3 times in her entire life, the one who'd moved to Boston decades ago and built some kind of business she'd never understood. She kept reading, her heart starting to pound. Mr. Mitchell's estate is valued at approximately $2.3 million, including liquid assets, property, and investments. However, due to complex legal proceedings and tax considerations, the full transfer of assets cannot be completed for approximately 6 months. In the interim, we are authorized to provide you with a preliminary disbursement of $50,000 to assist with immediate needs. Sarah read the letter 3 times. Then a fourth. $2 million. $2 million. She started to laugh, a strange, slightly hysterical sound that echoed through the empty house. Then she started to cry. Then she did both at once, clutching the letter to her chest like a life raft. For the first time in months, Sarah Collins felt something other than despair. She felt possibility. The lawyer's letter included strict instructions: the inheritance must remain confidential until all legal matters were settled. She couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't publicize it. Had to wait patiently for the full transfer. But that $50,000? That was real. That was hers. That was now. Sarah sat in her wheelchair, staring at that letter, and felt something she thought had died in the accident. She felt her spine straighten, metaphorically, if not physically. She felt her jaw set. She felt a spark of the woman she used to be, the woman who'd woken up before sunrise every single day, who'd built something from nothing, who'd loved fiercely and worked tirelessly and believed in tomorrow. Okay, she whispered to the empty room. Okay. Let's try again. The first thing Sarah did was cry. The second thing she did was call the lawyer's office and confirm everything was real. The third thing she did, after the money was deposited into her account, was sit down and make a plan. She paid off the most urgent bills. She bought herself a better wheelchair, one that actually fit her properly. She stocked her kitchen with quality ingredients for the first time in months. And then, slowly, carefully, she started to bake again. It wasn't easy. Everything took 3 times as long as it used to. She had to figure out how to reach the upper cabinets, how to work at counter height from her chair, how to move hot pans safely. She burned herself twice. She spilled flour everywhere. She cried in frustration more times than she could count. But she didn't stop. Every morning, she'd wake up early, not at 4:30 anymore, but by 6, and she'd wheel herself into that kitchen and make something. Cookies. Muffins. Bread. Not for sale at first. Just for herself. Just to remember who she was. One day, about 3 weeks into her new routine, there was a knock at her door. Sarah wheeled herself over and opened it to find Lucas Bennett standing on her porch, holding a cardboard box and wearing an uncertain smile. Lucas was an old friend from high school, one of those good people who'd always been kind but whom she'd lost touch with over the years. He'd moved away for college, come back a few years ago, and now worked as a freelance graphic designer from home. Lucas. Hey, Sarah. I heard about everything. The accident, Mark leaving, all of it. Small town, you know? He shifted the box awkwardly. I brought you some groceries. Thought you might need them. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. After so many people had walked away, here was someone walking toward her. That's really kind. Thank you. Can I come in? Just for a minute? She let him in, and he set the box on her kitchen counter. That's when he noticed the cooling racks covered in lemon bars, the smell of vanilla and butter still hanging in the air. "You're baking again." He said it with such genuine happiness that Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Trying to. It's harder than it used to be, but you're doing it anyway." Lucas smiled. That's the Sarah I remember. They talked for an hour. About the accident. About Mark's betrayal. About the loneliness and the fear and the darkness. Lucas listened without judgment, without pity, without trying to fix anything. He just listened. And then he said something that changed everything. "You know what this town needs? A really good bakery. Like, a real one, with a storefront and tables where people can sit and drink coffee. Maplewood's never had anything like that." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Yeah, well, that takes money I don't have." Lucas looked at her carefully. "What if you did it from home first? Built up a client base? I could help you deliver orders. Build you a website. Spread the word." "Why would you do that?" "Because you make the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever had, and also because you deserve a second chance." He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that Sarah almost believed him. "I don't know if I can." "You're already baking, Sarah. You're already doing the hardest part. Let me help with the rest." And just like that, Sarah Collins went back into business. It started small. Lucas created a simple website called Sarah's Sweet Spot and posted it on the Maplewood Community Facebook group. Within 2 days, Sarah had 5 orders. Within a week, she had 20. Lucas would come by every morning to pick up the orders and deliver them around town. He refused to take any money at first, insisting he just wanted to help, but eventually Sarah wore him down and they agreed to split the profits 50-50. Word spread quickly. People remembered Sarah's baking from before the accident. They remembered her kindness, her work ethic, her warm smile. And now, there was an added element: people wanted to support her. They wanted to be part of her comeback story. Mrs. Henderson ordered cinnamon rolls every week. The Thompsons became regulars again. Even Mr. Alvarez at the corner market started carrying her cookies. Sarah worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. Her arms grew stronger from wheeling herself around the kitchen. She developed new techniques, new systems. She invested in a rolling cart that made everything easier. She learned to ask for help when she needed it and to celebrate small victories. Lucas became more than a delivery driver. He became her friend, her cheerleader, her reminder that good people still existed in the world. On the hard days, and there were still many hard days, he'd sit with her and remind her how far she'd come. "You're rebuilding yourself, Sarah. Brick by brick. That takes courage." The months passed. Christmas came and went, the first one Sarah had spent alone, but somehow it felt less lonely than the previous year when Mark had been there but not really there. She baked gingerbread houses for the church fundraiser and donated half the proceeds to the local food bank. In February, Sarah got a phone call from the lawyer's office. "Mrs. Collins, I'm pleased to inform you that all legal matters have been resolved. Your uncle's full estate is now ready to be transferred to you." Sarah sat in her wheelchair, phone pressed to her ear, and felt the ground shift beneath her. It was time. The new bakery opened on the first day of spring. It was located on Main Street, right in the heart of Maplewood, a beautiful corner building with big windows, sage green walls, and a hand-painted sign that read Sarah's Sweet Spot in elegant script. Lucas had designed the logo. Sarah had chosen every detail of the interior. There were small tables with fresh flowers, a long glass case displaying an array of pastries, and an open kitchen where people could watch Sarah work. The accessibility modifications were seamless. Wide aisles. Counters at varying heights. Everything designed so that Sarah could move freely, work comfortably, exist without barriers. But Sarah didn't stop there. She used part of the inheritance to establish the Collins Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to helping people who'd been abandoned, left behind, or forgotten by society. People going through divorces. People with disabilities struggling to find work. People who just needed someone to believe in them again. The foundation provided small grants, connected people with resources, and created a community of support. Sarah hired a small staff to run it, but she stayed involved in every decision, every story, every life they touched. On opening day, the line stretched around the block. People came to celebrate Sarah, to support her, to taste her legendary chocolate chip cookies and cinnamon rolls. Mrs. Henderson was first in line. The Thompsons brought all 4 kids. Even Mr. Alvarez closed his store for an hour to come by. Lucas stood behind the counter with Sarah, helping ring up orders, his face glowing with pride. "Look at what you built," he said softly. "Look at what you became." Sarah looked around at the full tables, the happy faces, the community that had rallied around her. She thought about the dark night when she'd felt worthless, when she'd wondered if there was any point in continuing. And she smiled. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "But I did it." Mark showed up on a Tuesday afternoon in May. Sarah was in the kitchen, pulling a fresh tray of blueberry muffins from the oven, when Lucas came back looking uncomfortable. Sarah? "Mark's here. He wants to talk to you." Sarah's hand stilled on the oven mitt. She hadn't seen him in 6 months. Hadn't heard from him except through his lawyer during the divorce proceedings, which had been finalized in March. Send him back. Mark walked into the kitchen looking smaller than she remembered. His hair was unwashed. His clothes were wrinkled. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Sarah. Wow. This place it's really something." She didn't respond. Just waited. "Look, I know I screwed up. I know I was an idiot. But I've been thinking, and maybe we moved too fast with the divorce. Maybe we could try again. I've changed. I've grown. I realize now what I lost." "You lost nothing," Sarah said quietly. "Because you threw me away like I was garbage." "I was scared. So was I, Mark. I was terrified. I'd lost my ability to walk. I'd lost my business. I'd lost everything I thought my life was supposed to be. And instead of facing it with me, you betrayed me. You abandoned me. You told me I was worthless." "I never said." "You didn't have to. Your actions said it loud enough." Sarah set down the oven mitt and looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just a calm, clear certainty. "You came here because you heard about the bakery. About the foundation. About the money. You came here because you thought I might be useful to you again." Mark's face flushed. "That's not." "Yes, it is. And the answer is no. No second chance. No reconciliation. No help." Sarah rolled her chair closer, meeting his eyes. "I learned something these past months, Mark. I learned that I don't need people who only love me when it's convenient. I don't need people who run when things get hard. I deserve better than that. Sarah, please. The door's that way. Don't come back." For a moment, Mark looked like he might argue. But something in Sarah's face, some new strength, some unshakable dignity, made him stop. He turned and left without another word. Lucas appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" Sarah took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Yeah. I really am." That evening, after the bakery closed and the last customer had left, Sarah sat by the window and looked out at Main Street. The spring sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. People were walking their dogs, pushing strollers, living their lives. And Sarah Collins, who'd been broken, abandoned, left for dead by the people she'd trusted most, felt more whole than she'd ever felt in her life. She'd learned that wheelchairs don't make you less human. That disability doesn't equal worthlessness. That people who leave you in your darkest hour are showing you exactly who they are, and you should believe them. She'd learned that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. About baking bread even when your hands are shaking. About building a new life when the old one crumbles. About choosing kindness even when the world has been cruel. And most importantly, she'd learned her worth. Not from Mark's approval. Not from her ability to walk. Not from anyone else's definition of what she should be. But from herself. From the resilience she didn't know she had. From the courage to start over. From the decision to help others even while she was still healing. Sarah Collins had risen from the ashes of her old life and built something beautiful. Something real. Something that mattered. And she had done it on her own terms. The moral of Sarah's story wasn't complicated. It was simple, and true, and worth remembering. True strength comes from kindness, courage, and refusing to give up. People who stay loyal, to themselves and others, grow stronger with every challenge. And those who choose selfishness, who abandon the people who need them most, lose what truly matters. Not money. Not success. Not comfort. But love. Community. Purpose. Worth. Sarah had lost everything and gained something infinitely more valuable, herself. And that, she thought as she locked up the bakery and headed home through the warm spring evening, was the sweetest victory of all.